Dear students, today we are going to learn an interesting suspense story, An Astrologer's Day, written by a well known Indian writer, R.K. Narayan. He wrote 14 novels, 5 volumes of short stories, and a number of travelogues. He created an imaginary town of Malgudi. There is also a TV serial, Malgudi Days, based on his stories. He was given the Sahitya Akademi Award for his novel The Guide. The Hindi movie Guide is based on this novel. R.K. Narayan is known for his simplistic writing style. Simple folk or common people are the major characters in his writing. The story An Astrologer's Day is not an exception to this. In this story, we understand the life of an astrologer. In this short lecture, you will learn story in brief, new words from the story, explanation of the story, and features of the story. Let's begin the lesson. An Astrologer's Day, a short story by R.K. Narayan. Story in brief. There are three major characters in the story: an astrologer, a stranger, and astrologer's wife. An astrologer is the central character in the story. The story begins with the description of the astrologer. The author gives a list of his professional equipments and describes the appearance of the astrologer. He practices at a busy marketplace where there are many vendors, such as medicine sellers, sellers of cheap cloth, magicians, etc. The man is not trained as an astrologer, but he reads the mind of his clients and utters some vague statements. He usually speaks about the safe topics like marriage, money, and relationships. One evening, a stranger challenges him on his professional skills. The stranger offers him good money to hear the answers of his specific questions. The stranger lights a churut, a type of desi cigar, in the dim light, and the astrologer gets a glimpse of his face by the matchlight. He tries to withdraw from challenge and asks him to take his money back, but the man holds his wrist and forces him to tell his future. The astrologer tells the stranger that he had been stabbed and pushed into a well to die. The stranger was very impressed by listening the facts of his life. The stranger asks when he would get his revenge on the person who assaulted him. The astrologer calls him by his real name, Guru Nayak, and tells him that the man who tried to kill you died 4 months ago. The astrologer also warns him that if he traveled south again, he would be killed. Satisfied with the answers, Guru Nayak gives him some coins and left the place happily. The astrologer goes to home. It was nearly midnight. His wife was waiting for him. She was in worry. Later, after dinner, he confesses to his wife that long ago he was the man who stabbed and pushed Guru Nayak into the well in a quarrel. He thought that he had murdered Guru Nayak, but now he knows that Nayak did not die. He felt light-hearted and he went to bed. In this way, the story describes a day in the life of an astrologer. New words from the story. I request all the students to write down these new words in your notebook. See the list of words. Astrologer, a person who is an expert in astrology. An astrologer predicts future events. Cowrie shells, Shells of sea snails. Obscure means difficult to understand. Palmara means a kind of palm tree. Resplendent means bright or impressive. Enhanced means increased. Vociferousness means being loud and noisy. Enchantment means magical effect or charm. Bewildering means confusing or baffling. Shrewd, good at judging people or clever. Impetuous means impulsive or rash. Endeared means liked. Paraphernalia means a large number of small articles used in a particular activity. Tilt means to move. Piquet means annoyed. Bluff means to try to make people believe that something is true when it is not. Cheroot is a type of desi cigar. Glimpse means a quick view of something. Jutka means horse driven cart. Disgorge means ill surrender under pressure. Incantations means magical words. Haggling means bargaining. Overwhelm means to overpower emotionally. Gratified means pleased or satisfied. Paul means a string caught. Let's learn the text. Now open the textbook and see the original text by the author. Looking at the screen continuously is not good for your health, for your eyes. Now see the text. Punctually at midday, he opened his bag and spread out his professional equipment, which consisted of a dozen cowrie shells, a square piece of cloth with obscure mystic charts on it, a notebook, and a bundle of Palmyra writing. His forehead was resplendent with sacred ash and vermilion, and his eyes sparkled with a sharp abnormal gleam, which was really an outcome of a continual searching look for customers, but which his simple clients took to be a prophetic light and felt comforted. Now, in the story, the author describes a day in the life of an astrologer. It was a midday, and the astrologer was ready for his work. The writer gives a list of his equipments. See the list: cowrie shells, mystic charts on a piece of cloth, a notebook, and a bundle of Palmyra writing. His forehead was bright and impressive. He applied ash and vermilion on his forehead. Vermilion? In Hindi we call it sindoor. His shining eyes were searching for his customers. His simple clients would think that there is a prophetic light in his eyes and felt comforted. The power of his eyes was considerably enhanced by their position, placed as they were between the painted forehead and the dark whiskers which streamed down his cheeks. Even a half-wit's eyes would sparkle in such a setting. To crown the effect, he owned a saffron colored turban around his head. This color scheme never failed. People were attracted to him as bees are attracted to cosmos or dahlia stalks. He sat under the boughs of a spreading tamarind tree, which flanked a path running through the town hall park. It was a remarkable place in many ways. A surging crowd was always moving up and down this narrow road from morning till night. Now, here the author describes his attire and appearance. His painted forehead, long beard, shining eyes, and saffron colored turban around his head attracted the simple folk on the road. The author tells us that people were attracted to him as bees are attracted to cosmos or dahlia stalks. He sat under the boughs of a tamarind tree. The path was running through the town park. The place was crowded from morning till night. A variety of trades and occupations was represented all along its way. Medicine sellers, sellers of stolen hardware and junk, magicians, and above all, an actioner of cheap cloth who created enough din all day to attract the whole town. Next to him, in vociferousness, came a vendor of fried groundnut who gave his ware a fancy name each day, calling it Bombay ice cream one day, and on the next, Delhi almond, and on the third, Raja's delicacy, and so on, so forth. And people flocked to him. A considerable portion of this crowd delight before the astrologer too. The writer tells us that there were various trades and occupations. There were medicine sellers, sellers of stolen articles and junk, magicians, cloth sellers, and a vendor of fried groundnut. To attract the customers, the groundnut seller gave fancy names to groundnuts each day. He would call it Bombay ice cream, Delhi almond, or sometimes Raja's delicacy. While eating groundnuts, people would see the astrologer too. The astrologer transacted his business by the light of a player, which crackled and smoked up above the groundnut heap nearby. Half the enchantment of the place was due to the fact that it did not have the benefit of municipal lighting. The place was lit up by shop lights. One or two had hissing gas lights. Some had naked flares stuck on poles. Some were lit up by old cycle lamps, and one or two, like the astrologer, managed without lights of their own. The astrologer performed his business without his own light. There was no facility of municipal lighting. Some shopkeepers had gas light, some had cycle lamps, and some managed without lights of their own, like our astrologer. It was a bewildering crisscross of light rays and moving shadows. This suited the astrologer very well, for the simple reason that he had not in the least intended to be an astrologer when he began life, and he knew no one of what was going to happen to others than he knew what was going to happen to himself next minute. He was as much a stranger to the stars as were his innocent customers. Yet he said things which pleased and astonished everyone. That was more a matter of study, practice, and shrewd guesswork. All the same, it was as much as honest man's labor as any other, and he deserved the wages he carried home at the end of a day. Confusing light rays coming from other shops and moving shadows were good for the astrologer. His intention was not to be an astrologer in life. Accidentally, he became an astrologer. The writer tells us that he was also a stranger to the stars, like his innocent customers. He was telling pleasant and surprising things to his clients. It was a matter of study, practice, and shrewd guesswork. He was going, he was doing his job very honestly. He deserved the wages for it. He had left his village without any previous thought or plan. If he had continued there, he would have carried on the work of his forefathers namely tilling the land, living, marrying, and ripening in his cornfield and ancestral home. But that was not to be. He had to leave home without telling anybody, and he could not rest till he left it behind a couple of 100 miles. To a villager, it is a great deal, as if an ocean flowed between. He had a working analysis of mankind's troubles, marriage, money, and the tangle of human ties. Long practice had sharpened his perception. Within 5 minutes, he understood what was wrong. He charged 3 Ps per question, never opened his mouth till the other had spoken for at least 10 minutes, which provided him enough stuff for a dozen answers and advices. The astrologer came in this city from a small village without any plan. If he had not come here, he would have lived in the same village, cultivating the land and doing other activities like other villagers. He had to leave home without telling anyone. He settled in this town away from a couple of 100 miles from his village. The astrologer was a street smart person. He understood the root cause of human problems. He spoke on marriage, money, and human relations. Long practice had sharpened his perception. He charged 3 paise per question. He would listen to the clients for at least 10 minutes to understand their problems. When he told the person before him, gazing at his palm, in many ways, you are not getting the fullest result for your efforts. 9 of 10 were disposed to agree with him or question, is there any woman in your family? Maybe even a distant relative who is not well disposed towards you? Or he gave an analysis of character. Most of your troubles are due to your nature. How can you be otherwise with Saturn, where he is? You have an impetuous nature and a rough exterior. This endeared him to their hearts immediately, for even the mildest of us loves to think that he has a forbidding exterior. After listening a lot of things from the customers, gazing at the palm, he would say, you are not getting the fullest result for your efforts. Or he would ask, is there any woman who is not well disposed towards you? Or he would say, your nature is good and there are many problems because of your good nature. In this way, the stranger would make vague statements and people would like such statements. The nuts vendor blew out his player and rose to go home. This was a signal for the astrologer to bundle up too, since it left him in darkness except for a little shaft of green light which strayed in from somewhere and touched the ground before him. He picked up his cowrie shells and paraphernalia and was putting them back into his bag when the green shaft of light was blotted out. He looked up and saw a man standing before him. It was evening time. There was semi darkness. The groundnut vendor blew out his player and rose to go home. The astrologer, too, decided to bundle up. A few green light rays were approaching to him. He picked up his cowrie shells and other small articles to put them in his bag. At the same time, he saw a man standing before him. He sensed a possible client and said, you look so careworn. It will do good to you. Sit down for a while and chat with me. The other grumbled some reply vaguely. The astrologer praised his invitation, whereupon the other thrust his palm under his nose, saying, "You call yourself an astrologer?" The astrologer felt challenged and said, tilting the other's palm towards the green shaft of light, "Yours is a nature." "Oh, stop that," the other said. "Tell me something otherwise." The astrologer saw the man and thought that this might be a client, so he said, "You look so worried. Please sit down for a while and chat with me." The stranger grumbled and said something vaguely. The astrologer invited him again. The stranger thrust his palm under his nose and asked, "You call yourself an astrologer?" The astrologer felt that he is challenged. He tried to make some vague statements, but the stranger stopped him. Our friend felt piqued. "I charge only 3 Ps per question, and what you get ought to be good enough for your money." At this, the other withdrew his arm, took out an anna, and flung it out to him, saying, "I have some questions to ask. If I prove you are bluffing, you must return that anna to me with interest. If you find my answer satisfactory, will you give me 5 rupees? No. Or will you give me 8 annas? All right, provided you give me twice as much if you are wrong," said the stranger. This pact was accepted after a little further argument. Here we see a dialogue between the astrologer and the stranger. The astrologer was annoyed. He said, "I charge only 3 paise per question." The stranger withdrew his arm and said, "If you don't give right answers, you must return the given anna with interest." After a little argument, the pact was accepted by the both. The astrologer sent up a prayer to heaven as the other lit a cheroot. The astrologer caught a glimpse of his face by the matchlight. There was a pause as cars hooked on the road, jutka drivers swore at their horses, and the babble of crowd agitated the semi-darkness of the park. The other sat down, sucking his cheroot, puffing out, sat there ruthlessly. The astrologer felt very uncomfortable. "Here, take your Anna back. I am not used to such challenges. It is late for me today." He made preparations to bundle up. The other held his wrist and said, "You can't get out of it now. You dragged me in while I was passing." The astrologer shivered in his grip, and his voice shook and became faint. "Leave me today. I will speak to you tomorrow." The other thrust his palm in his face and said, "Challenge is challenge. Go on." The astrologer proceeded with his throat drying up. "There is a woman." The astrologer prayed God, and the stranger lit a cheroot. Cheroot is a type of desi cigar. The astrologer quickly saw the face of the stranger by the matchlight. There were cars blowing horns and horse driven carts running on the road. The stranger sat before him, sucking his cheroot. The stranger felt uncomfortable. He said to the stranger, "Take your Anna back and speak to me tomorrow." The stranger was a rude person. He said, "Challenge is challenge. Go on." Now the astrologer was forced to predict the future of his customer, of the stranger. "Stop," said the other. "I don't want all that. Shall I succeed in my present search or not? Answer this and go. Otherwise, I will not let you go till you disgorge all your coins." The astrologer muttered a few incantations and replied, "All right, I will speak, but Will you give me a rupee if what I say is convincing? Otherwise, I will not open my mouth, and you may do what you like. After a good deal of haggling, the other agreed. The astrologer said, "You were left for dead. Am I right?" Now, the stranger told the astrologer not to speak other things. Give him the answers of his questions. Shall I succeed in my present search or not? Answer this and go. Otherwise, accept your defeat and give me all your coins and go. The astrologer uttered a few incantations. Incantations means magical words, and replied, "I will speak if you give me a rupee." After some bargaining, the stranger agreed. The astrologer said, "You were left for dead. Am I right?" "Ah, tell me more." "A knife has passed through you once," said the astrologer. "Good fellow." He bared his chest to show the scar. "What else?" "And when you were pushed into a well nearby in the field, you were left for dead." "I should have been dead if some passerby had not chanced to peep into the well," exclaimed the other, overwhelmed by enthusiasm. "When shall I get at him?" he asked, clenching his fist. "In the next world," answered the customer. "He died 4 months ago in a far off town. You will never see any more of him." The other groaned on hearing it. The astrologer proceeded, "Guru Nayak." "You know my name?" the other said, taken aback. The astrologer continued, "A knife has passed through you once." The stranger was highly impressed by listening the facts of his life. The astrologer added that, "You were pushed into a well in the field." The stranger told the astrologer that he was saved by some passerby and asked, "When shall I get him?" The stranger wanted to take revenge. The astrologer told him that the person who assaulted him was died 4 months ago. The astrologer also tells the stranger's name, Guru Nayak. The stranger was flabbergasted by listening all these facts. The stranger was greatly astonished by listening all these facts. "As I know all other things, Guru Nayak, listen carefully to what I have to say. Your village is 2 days' journey due north of this town. Take the next train and be gone. I see once again great danger to your life if you go from home." He took out a pinch of sacred ash, held it to him. "Rub it on your forehead and go home. Never travel southward again, and you will live to be 100. "Why should I leave home again?" the other said reflectively. "I was only going away now and then to look for him and to choke out his life if I met him." He shook his head regretfully. "He has escaped my hands. I hope at least he died as he deserved." "Yes," said the astrologer. The astrologer warned Guru Nayak that there is a great danger to his life if he goes away from his home. He also suggested him not to travel southward again. He also told the stranger that the person whom he is searching for was crushed under a lorry. The stranger pleased by hearing it. "He was crushed under a lorry?" The other looked gratified to hear it. The place was deserted by the time the astrologer picked up his articles and put them into his bag. The green shaft was also gone, leaving the place in darkness and silence. The stranger had gone off into the light after giving the astrologer a handful of coins. It was nearly midnight when the astrologer reached home. His wife was waiting for him at the door and demanded an explanation. He flung the coins at her and said, "Count them." One man gave all that. 12.5 annas, she said, counting. She was overjoyed. "I can buy some jaggery and coconut tomorrow. The child has been asking for sweets for so many days. I will prepare some nice stuff for her." The place was deserted by all the sellers and shopkeepers. The astrologer picked up his articles and put them into his bag. The stranger gave a handful of coins and went off. It was nearly midnight when he reached home. His wife was waiting for him. He gave all the coins to her and asked her to count the amount. The woman was overjoyed. After counting all the coins, she said that it is 12.5 annas. She wanted to buy some jaggery and coconut for their children by that amount. "The swine has cheated me. He promised me a rupee," said the astrologer. She looked up at him. "You look worried. What is wrong?" "Nothing." After dinner, sitting on the pail, he told her, "Do you know a great lord? He has gone from me today. I thought I had the blood of a man on my hands all these days. That was the reason why I ran away from home, settled here, and married you. He is alive." She gasped. "You tried to kill him?" "Yes, in our village, when I was a silly youngster. We drank, gambled, and quarreled badly one day. Why think of it now?" "Time to sleep," he said, yawning, and stretched himself on the pail. The astrologer calls the stranger as the swine. Swine means a pig, because he did not keep his promise of giving 1 rupee. Later at night, after dinner, the astrologer confesses to his wife that long ago he was the man who stabbed and pushed Guru Nayak into the well. His wife was shocked by listening this. He confessed to her that when he was a silly youngster, he drank, gambled, and quarreled badly with Guru Nayak and made this mistake. He thought that he had killed Guru Nayak, but now he knows that Guru Nayak did not die, and he is alive. He felt light-hearted and went to bed. In this way, the story ends here. Features of the story. The story reveals ironical fact about the protagonist, a person who is a gambler and murderer who does not know his own future becomes an astrologer in the story. Any person can become an astrologer in India by wearing saffron clothes, by applying a tilak on his or her forehead, and using cowrie shells and few charts. The writer describes the presence of superstitions in our society. Human greed. The astrologer comes home and tells his wife that a big load was off his mind. He also realizes that Guru Nayak had given him less money than he had promised. He becomes angry. The author doesn't tell what is good and what is bad. He just tells the story in simplistic language. Dear students, once again read the story and do all the activities given your textbook. Subscribe my YouTube channel for more videos. Thank you for watching.